Good morning, friends. When I was in college, I played water polo. And in the off season, my friend and I decided that it would be a fun idea to join a course that was called Dynamic Fitness and Exercise in order to stay in shape. And what we didn't know was that our off season was the football team's on season. So we were taking this course with all of the football players, and it was the kind of things where they would tie, weights to you, and you'd run around the track, or you'd push sleds and things like that. And we were literally fish out of water in this course. But everyone was very nice to us, and they were all doing their thing. And then the two little water polo players would come running behind and bring up the caboose, essentially, in whatever activities we were doing. And one of the most exciting parts of this course was that every 2 weeks we went to what was called the hill. And it was about just under a mile, just straight up. And the goal was to sprint to the top of the hill in under, I forget what it was, 10 minutes or something like that. And so every 2 weeks we'd go and we'd take a measure on this. And you would sprint just as far as you could. Then you'd stop, you'd track your time, and then make your way up the hill in whatever timing was left. So over the course of this semester that we would take this class, we did do it more than once, just to say it all ends well. I'm painting a picture, but it was actually quite fun. But at the end of this semester of doing this, you'd have probably 20 tries up this hill. And all along the way, what you're measuring are your failures. How far did you make it? How far didn't you get? And the next time, how far did you make it? Maybe you made it further, maybe you didn't. Over and over again, and you were just sort of tracking all the times you didn't quite cut it, because very rarely did anyone, or let me put it this way, never did I make it to the top of the hill at a sprint. And so I'm holding this paper, but at the end of the semester, when you're kind of reviewing, you're self-reflecting on how the exercises went, how you progressed, how your training went. And what I began to notice is that there was actually an upward trend. And so all along the way, I was tracking my failures, one after another, week after week after week. But when we could take a step back, when you could actually begin to look at it and see the trend, you could see maybe we never made it to the top of the hill, not yet at least. You can probably all see where we're going with this analogy. But we were actually succeeding. And every single step, that's why this song is so beautiful, The Hill That Was Tara. Every effort we spend gives more strength in the end, till our gladness in life's ever new. We move through the world, and so often we're pre-programmed, and the world wants to tell us to measure ourselves. And when we're measuring ourselves, we're constantly comparing ourselves against that which we cannot do, or that which somebody else is doing. And the beautiful trick of delusion is that often that comparison is how somebody else is doing it better, how somebody else is just a little bit more worthy than you in your professional life, in your family life, in our friendships, in ourselves, and ultimately even with God. We begin to ask that question. What are my successes? What are my failures? How am I measuring up? And of course, the poetic beauty of this is that Maya means the measurer. That Maya, that force of delusion, is what's asking us and, what's the word, not supporting us, the word's not coming to me, but what's encouraging us into that deluded state of measuring, of comparing. And if we can just continue to step back, if we can see the upward trend, then we begin to realize that, of course, what Swami Kriyananda, what all of these great masters have taught us, failure doesn't actually exist. Because at the root, you are already that which you are seeking to become. Yogananda's definition of self-realization is that the knowing in body, mind, and spirit that you are now in possession of the kingdom of heaven, that you need not pray that it will come to you, that God's omnipresence is your omnipresence. And all you need to do is improve your knowing. You already are that which you are seeking. We've already made it to the top of the mountain in under 10 seconds, or in under 10 minutes, probably 10 seconds. If we're actually omnipotent, we have that ability. The mountain doesn't even exist when we finally reach that place of realizing and of knowing that. And what a beautiful thing to hold on to. It's yours already. but we measure ourselves. Maya comes in. And the moment that that thought slips in, what if I'm not good enough? That's the seed, that's the fuel that delusion needs, that downward pulling force needs to tell you, I don't need to meditate today. I'm too tired to do my energization. I'm too this, I'm too that. I can't. It all comes back to that one thought of measuring, how far am I from the divine? Am I worthy of Divine Mother's love? And if we can continue to just release that feeling, if we can continue to know and to see or to understand that we are the pure gold beneath it. You know, this morning I just picked up Light Bearer, and as many of us I'm sure tend to do when we know that we're coming to give a talk or a class, I said a little prayer and said, Swamiji, if you have anything to say to me, say it now. And I opened the book to the 1987 and to the section of a chapter where Asha was introducing the two new ceremonies that Swami created, the purification ceremony and the superconscious attunement ceremony. And so I was reading about the purification ceremony, which of course we just practiced and we practice here every Sunday. And in it, Swamiji, she was describing how Swamiji created the purification ceremony in lieu of confession. And for those of you that were raised in the Catholic Church, you are probably all too familiar with confession, where you come in front of the priest and you offer yourself as a sinner for redemption. And I know I've shared this story here once before, but I was raised Catholic as well. And I can remember from a very young age, from about 6 on, you take what's called catechism classes, and you come every Wednesday and learn about the Bible, and that's where you start to practice all of these different sacraments. And I can remember sitting in the front row. There were 10 of us in my little catechism group when we were 6, maybe 7 years old, and every month or so we had to go to confession. And so the priest would come, and he was sitting up on the dais in his chair, and we were all lined up like little ducks, all 6 of us. And this is the part of the story, I know I've shared this here before because I can remember doing it. I remember so vividly being so young that my feet didn't hit the floor. So I was just swinging my little feet while I was sitting in the pew right here, thinking, what the heck am I going to say to the priest? What have I sinned? What are my sins? And here I am just trying to think, well, I guess I've done this. Well, that wasn't very nice, but being a little 6-year-old, how do you identify as a sinner? Of course, it reminds me of when Master Yogananda ji was sitting, and I forget the exact context now, but he was sitting in a church, and the priest was standing up, and he says, stand up and raise your hand if you're a sinner, and the whole church stands up, and Yogananda ji didn't. He just stood there. Don't identify with yourself as a sinner, because the beautiful part of this story, to come back to this chapter in Light Bearer that I was reading this morning, the reason that Swami Kriyananda, or that it's expressed that Swami Kriyananda gave us this purification ceremony, is to shift that mentality away from coming in front of God in your littleness, in front of God as a sinner and saying, redeem me, help me, but rather to say, this is who I am, to offer your pure gold. And so the metaphor that Asha uses when she describes this scene in this moment is that gold, even when it's clouded in mud and covered in mud, the purity, the pure essence of that gold, it still exists. And all we have to do is pick it up, to clean it up, to wipe off the layers of mud and dirt. And there is that gold in its pure, perfected state. And so it is with all of us. All we need to do is pick ourselves up and dust off the little trails of delusion that keep us caught, that keep us right here, tracking our failures, 13 seconds, 18 seconds, 25 seconds, and to just cast them aside and to look at the upward trend, to look at the longer rhythms. The masters aren't looking at rhythms of moments or days or years, they're looking at rhythms of incarnations. And so for us, what that means is to stand. I loved this affirmation. I will confess I hadn't read it before today, so I was listening and enjoying along with you this morning. And I love these 3 aspects of courage: blind courage, passive courage, dynamic courage, then of course divine courage coming at the end of that. And this is what the masters ask of us: dynamic courage, the kshatriya, the warrior who can stand up and fight for what is right, to fight for what is noble, and to take a forward step. Because failure, delusion, shame, that sense of worthlessness or unworthiness, it keeps us stagnant. And all we have to do to walk the spiritual path, no matter how high the mountaintop is, the mountaintop won't come down to us. We have to keep walking. But that's the beauty and the simplicity of it. This reading is actually quite a challenge, what Jesus is asking us to do, to love those who have persecuted you, to forgive those who have harmed you, right? All of these different aspects, they're not all coming to me in the moment right now. But all of what is being asked of us to be bigger than you are, to transcend yourself, to transcend the ego that says that I'm going to stay here in this small, in this limited space. And instead just to climb to the top of that mountain. And the beauty of this, at the end of all of that, he says it's quite simple. Just love God. Just take one step at a time. Just a few weeks ago, about 4 weeks ago now, I drove up into, up near Eureka, up into Sequoia National Park, and wanted to do some hiking in the trees. And the trip itself actually got rained out pretty much everywhere except for one day. And so I just pulled off on the side of the road, and it was a trail I hadn't done a lot of research on, most of the trails were closed by the time I got up there. So I just kind of pulled off onto the road and parked my car and started walking. And I have not done a lot of forest hiking before. I've done a lot of summit hiking where you can kind of always see where you're headed, and there's always sort of there's a landmark, there's a pole star that's guiding your walk in a certain way. And this was my first time really being in kind of dense forest like that. And for those of you that have been there, it's surreal. As soon as you get far enough away from anything, everything looks the same. You actually have no idea where you are, or let me rephrase that. I had no idea where I was, how to get in, how to get out. Now, of course, I was on a trail, so I knew I wasn't going to get too lost, but there's all these little side trails that are snaking around, and I kept saying, don't you do it. You just walk straight. You stay on this trail. Because the deeper I went probably about 2.5 miles in, and I could feel my anxiety. I kept just getting more and more unsure of myself, and I kept saying, Lakshmi, all you have to do is turn around and just walk straight back the way you came. But I got to a certain point where there were all these different forks in the road, and it was, or in the path, and it was starting to rain a little bit more intensely, so I decided to turn around. And I could feel for a moment the desire to stay still, because even though I knew the path I needed to take back, there were options, there was just too much uncertainty. And I felt this sort of sense of panic and this idea of, well, just stay here and maybe tomorrow somebody will come by and they'll find you. I was never actually lost, just so we're all clear. But I could feel that sort of sense of the freeze. Just stay where you are. I have no idea how to get out of this. And then I was telling myself, you just have to walk. You just have to pick the path, pick the one that you know or you believe to be right, pick it and go, and just walk, and don't stop walking. And that whole way back was about 45 minutes or so. That little thought in my mind, just keep going, just keep going. Anytime I wanted to stop and get uncertain again or get nervous, just keep walking, just keep walking. This is what dynamic courage takes. Right? If we move that into that larger sense, what is dynamic courage but the strength to just keep walking? I live protected in Divine Mother's light. As long as I stay in the heart of it, nothing and no one can harm me. I live perfected. It's something along those lines. I live perfected. Let me just pull it up. Thank you. Infinite light, that's the word I was looking for. I stand protected in God's infinite light. As long as I remain in the heart of it, nothing and no one can harm me. What a battle cry for us to carry with us. To walk or to march, or even that beautiful chant, I want only thee, I want only thee. What if that mantra is ringing in our ear no matter what we do? Then everything that we do is infused and impregnated with that desire to know and to live in the truth. That you are that perfect bar of gold. Maybe it's coated in a little bit of mud, maybe it's buried underneath the soil, but it's there nonetheless. And it's just waiting to be grabbed, to be cleaned, to be held in our very heart. And the only thing we have to do to get there is to remember to love God. To remember that all of this, that whispers that Kamala Devi read was so beautiful. What do we see at the end of it? It's all just a dream. It's all just a play. And our only job in the play is to act, to keep taking one step forward, to keep putting God at the very center of our heart, and to know that no matter what comes, persecution, joy, whatever it may be, that I stand in the very center of God's infinite light, that I am untouched by all of it. This is the great secret. I'll share just one final story. And it's a story, of course, we all know well, the story of King Janaka. And King Janaka was a good king. He ruled with nobility. He was compassionate. He was generous. He was kind. He was all things that a good and true and noble king should be. And yet he was still unsatisfied. And one day he calls upon a sage to come and to teach him what the secret, the meaning of life truly is. And so this sage comes, and the sage says to him, "You are not your body. You are not your mind. You are pure consciousness. This is the secret to life." And King Janaka begins to meditate on this, and this sage takes him into the forest where they're meditating on this concept. You are pure consciousness. Self-realization is the knowing in body, mind, and spirit that you are now in possession of the kingdom of heaven. You are that pure consciousness. And they're meditating on this together. And King Janaka is beginning to feel it in his heart. And suddenly the sage, through his yogic powers, he sets King Janaka's palace on fire. Everything that King Janaka has, symbolic of everything that worldly materialism, titles, possessions can hold for us, all of that value. The sage sets it on fire, and his servants come running into the forest and saying to him in a panic, "Your palace is on fire. Everything is being destroyed. Everything is being burned." And King Janaka stays just perfectly in his center. "It's all a dream. It's all a play. I am pure consciousness. I am not my body. I am not my mind. I'm not my palace. I'm not my titles." Everything that we move through the world, measuring within ourselves, all of the successes, all of the failures, all of our activities, they all mean only one thing. How much do I love God? That's the only measure that truly matters in the end. Everything goes up in smoke. All of those titles will disappear. All of those things that the world tells us to value will disappear, but our love for God, our courage of conviction, that dynamic strength to stay in the very heart of who we know to be, what we know to be true, well, then we begin to learn God's omnipresence is my omnipresence. I need not pray that it come to me. All I need is to improve my knowing. We know beyond a shadow of a doubt who we truly are, and we hold that, and it can never be taken away, no matter what the storms and the trials are. And we often think those storms and trials are huge and grand, and of course they look that way in the play of the world and what we see right now. But how often does it also come back to the momentary decisions? Do I want to get angry? Do I even let that angry thought play out in my head? Can I pull it back right in this moment? Can I be calm? Can I be centered right here? Can I be accepting of what is right now in this very moment? That's what Yogananda said. Take care of the moments or the years. The moments are more important than the years. Moment by moment, we make the decision to love God. We make the decision to practice dynamic courage. And what we find that the successes and failures, whatever we measured all along that grand walk of life, it doesn't matter in the end because the chart is trending upward. We're moving closer and closer to the divine. And then just like King Janaka, who it said became a Jivan Mukta, one who is free and liberated in this life after releasing everything that mattered on the material plane, and holding God in his heart. That's what we begin to do. We walk through the world liberated from all of what anchors us back to delusion. We live in God's light. God bless you.
In the inspiration we're feeling, in that aspiration to true perfection, the memory of God's presence within us. We'll have some music now.
the spiral stairway of wakefulness, I will whisper, whisper, Thou art the food, and when I break my fast of nightly separation from Thee, I will taste Thee and mentally say, God, No matter where I go, the spotlight of my mind will ever keep turning on Thee. And in the battle din of activity, my silent war cry will be, God, God. When boisterous storms of trials shriek, and when worries howl at me, I will drown their noises, loudly chanting, God, Every night in time of deepest sleep, when peace dreams and calls joy, joy, my joy comes singing evermore. When my mind weaves dreams, dreams with threads of memories, on that magic cloth will I emboss, God, In waking, eating, working, dreaming, sleeping, serving, meditating, chanting, divinely loving, my soul will constantly hum, unheard by